dirty talk you? Nick Nolte or Jimmy Stewart?
Well, I'm just got out of the shower. I'm only wearing a towel.
Yeah, there's really no way to not. Like, it just sounds wholesome coming out of Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah. He must get by on charm then, because I just can't imagine him as a quote-unquote notorious sex pot.
Yeah, what's that, there's like a checklist of things, it's like, somewhere online, it's like, you know, a list of things that you know that you're in a Hitchcock movie if, and one is, if you're an older, unattractive man dating a blonde bombshell and you hate each other.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you watch, you know, Rear Window and you're like, in what world does a Jimmy Stewart end up with a Grace Kelly?
Right, yeah. And isn't she wearing, like, crazy designer fashions throughout the whole movie?
And he could not give a fuck about her in that movie. He is so not interested in anything.
And she's doing everything she can, including wearing designer fashion. Like, hey! Yeah, he's way more interested in his neighbors.
Yeah. Whatever they got going on.
Well, welcome
to X-Rated.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Whedon.
I'm Matt Fisher.
This is a podcast by two guys who dated 10 years ago.
For a couple of weeks.
And then we took a 10-year break. And now we get together and talk about movies once a week.
Do you think if we put together all the time that we've spent for this podcast, both like the short time before we hit record and like the time we spend afterwards, do you think if we added all those up, it would be greater than the actual amount of time that we dated?
It's quite possible, yeah. If not more, it's pretty close.
I would also, I mean, we definitely text more than I think we did back then, because back then I'm sure I still had like my shitty little Nokia.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was like still the infancy of texting to instantly date us and make us seem ancient.
Yeah, texting you used to have to hit, you know, A, B, C,
yeah,
A.
yeah.
And then P, Q, R. I remember my phone had a predictive text that was not very good, and every time I'd type in nope, N-O-P-E, it would assume I was trying to type the word North. And, which comes up all the time. I mean, it was super useful. So after a while, I stopped correcting it, and just if anybody got a text from me where I was saying nope, they got North, and they knew what it meant. It's fine.
Thank God we've evolved past that. Like, you know, otherwise we'd still be doing like, you know, C-U-L-A-ter.
Yeah.
Like, thank God we've gotten past that. Like, we needed
You
it.
don't type that anymore?
We needed it for a short period of time there, but we've evolved past that. I also like texting because it's less invasive. It's less, you called me last time, I was like, did somebody die? They better have.
It's weird, isn't it, how that works?
Yeah, I thought that was like an emergency.
I really only talk on the phone with my parents anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I rarely have... Nowadays, if I have to relay a lot of information, I just send an email. If it's going to be longer... If it's something that I feel like is longer than a text message, I'll just send an email.
If I have to relay a lot of information, I will cease contact with you.
Not worth it anymore?
This is not worth our friendship. I'm just happier in solitude.
Good to know. Good to know. Keep it in bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
My questions.
If our friendship cannot be contained in more than a tweet, then I am not interested. I watched a movie called Streetwise, or a documentary called Streetwise.
Okay.
It's from like 1984, and it's about homeless youth in Seattle.
Oh man, I'd never even heard of this.
It's really good. It's really good. It's sort of like, did you ever see Paris is Burning?
Oh yeah.
It's like that, but instead of like, with Paris is Burning, it feels like you have like an invite to some secret underground club. This is like a cry for help for people. It's like these kids, like, even when they don't mention it explicitly, it's like, oh, these kids clearly come from like broken homes or like, you know, some form of instability or abuse.
Yeah.
because like you watch them, it's like they're all like intelligent and bright and like aware. It's just their expectations for life have been so lowered that, you know, scrounging for trash isn't, they don't see it as degrading or debasing or anything like that. Like, for them, they're just like, oh, this is fine, this is how we get food. This is what we gotta do.
Wow.
But yeah, it was just crazy because, you know, I felt kind of like Kyle MacLachlan, Blue Velvet, where it's like, you know, I've lived in, you know, Seattle proper for over 13 years now, and obviously we have homeless people here, but, you know, I just walk past them most of the time.
Who made it? Who directed it?
Someone I'd never heard of before.
Wow.
Like they didn't really go on to do anything else.
84, huh?
Yeah. But I was watching it while breaking down some old moving boxes.
Okay.
And I was using my keys because I had used my scissors to cut open a packet of meat. And it got meat juice all over it, so I had them running in the dishwasher. And really, keys work just as well on packing tape as scissors, I feel. Like, as long as you got, like, a good, like, a car key or something like that. Yeah. They cut through most tape, but...
Maybe that's a function, like, a part, a feature for them. Because, like, if you've got all your knives and scissors packed away, and you need to bust in there, they figure you can just use your keys.
Well, there's some tape that has, like, a little strand, I don't know, it's like a string or something. That makes it harder to cut through. But I found that those types of tape, they peel off easier.
And that's still considered packing tape.
Yeah. And there's, like, the clear type of tape that's a packing tape, but then there's also, like, the masking tape that's a packing tape. Masking tape's definitely easier to cut through.
And there's, like, the paper kind, too.
Yeah, I don't use the paper kind. I don't know, I found that it never really meets my needs as far as
I've always
goes.
just used the plastic kind. I wonder why they make paper tape.
Maybe paper tape has less residue that it leaves on stuff, so, you know, if you're taping something other than a box, and you're concerned about what it's leaving behind.
I wonder if there's, like, various levels of, you know, stickiness / residue leaving that tape. Different types of tape have. If there's, like, a scale, you know?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, this is definitely a question to lob over to the 3M people. So if there's anybody who works at 3M who's listening, we'd love to get your feedback on this.
Yeah, if we could get, like, the Mythbusters in here.
It's interesting that you brought this up, because we have a listener who wrote in and on our email and said that they really loved our tape conversation from Tampopo, which I thought was weird.
No one loved that conversation.
Apparently this one did, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like maybe we should send them a roll of tape or something that we've autographed.
If they're bold enough to give us their address in an email, I will gladly pay the postage and expense out the cost of the tape. And I will send them a roll of tape myself.
I would even let them choose what type of tape we send.
What if they choose some, like, top tier tape?
I mean, top tier tape can't be that expensive.
There's got to be an industrial tape of some sort.
Oh, God.
You know?
Oh, the shipping on that's going to be murder. Well, we'll see.
If they do the research, then they earned it.
Exactly. I'll write them back. We'll see what happens.
Okay, yeah, we'll see. They might just appreciate that we're broaching the subject and not want anything in return.
Yeah. X-rated. Not just for movie buffs. Tape aficionados welcome as well. Well, would you like to start discussing the movie for this week?
Yeah, what did we watch this week?
We watched one of Ryan's all-time favorite movies.
Yeah?
The Brave Little Toaster.
Oh.
Yeah, it's from 1987.
Sure.
Directed by Jerry Reese.
Whoever that is.
We'll get into that.
Okay.
Before I launch into this, I mean, it's no question that I love this movie. I want to know, A, do you remember this movie at all? Like, had you seen it as a child? And B, if not, or either way, what are your impressions of that?
So, I wasn't sure going into it if I had seen it or not, because if I had, it been such a long time, it would have been within a couple years of its release. Mm-hmm. So that's putting me in like the 5-6-year-old range. Mm-hmm. So going into it, I wasn't quite sure. Watching it, I remembered feelings that I had.
Oh, okay.
From originally watching it, but I didn't remember any specific instance.
Okay.
So, when the radio started talking, I was like, that's Jon Lovitz.
Right.
And I just remembered that because at the time, like, my dad watched SNL every Saturday.
Oh, okay.
And so I was sort of passingly familiar with who Jon Lovitz was when I initially saw this. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that, like, I immediately identified the voice as Jon Lovitz. It was like, I know that's Jon Lovitz because I remember my dad pointing that out when I watched it.
Oh, okay.
And there was a couple other things, like, when I was a kid, I remember being really sort of, I don't want to say scared, but maybe, like, a little heartbroken, or, I don't know what the good term is, when the air conditioning sort of blows out.
Oh, yeah.
What air conditioner?
I remember thinking that was really... it's something between scary and heartbreaking. Like, I don't know what the term is, but it was like...
There's a lot that happens in that little moment, because he, like, gets angry, blows up, and then everybody's sad and feels bad that they forced him to do that.
Yeah.
Or drove him to that breaking point.
I just remember watching it as a kid that... Yeah, the scene where this weird Jack Nicholson air conditioning...
Voiced by Phil Hartman.
Yes. Who does another one of the voices in there, too.
Yeah, he does the other lamp in the parts store.
Oh, the Peter Lorre lamp.
Yeah.
I just remember... I don't know, it struck me in a strange way as a kid. And it kind of struck me that way now. Like, I had a similar feeling watching it now. Mm-hmm. But as a kid, I guess I would put it more in, like, the scary range. Like, it wasn't a scene that I enjoyed watching it as a child.
Sure.
Yeah, just because it seems so strange that, like, he gets so angry and, like, dies, essentially, because he gets so angry. Mm-hmm. It was a weird moment to watch that as a kid.
I could see that, for sure.
And then, there was maybe just a couple other instances of moments like that. Like, I think when they were getting sucked into the swamp, a little while later.
It's dark.
Yeah. I mean, the movie itself is sort of dark. Like, it's not brightly lit or sunshiny or super vibrant in colors. It's sort of muted in its color scheme. Yeah. Like, it has, like, a darkness running through it. I mean, it just sort of deals with, like, abandonment, like, as its, like, running premise, like...
And feeling worthless.
Yeah. While watching it, I was like, it feels like it hits all the themes that all three of the Toy Story movies hit.
Indeed. That's a very important point.
Okay.
Because it was actually going to be the first Pixar film for feature length.
Oh, really?
Yeah, John Lasseter wanted to produce a feature length film using computer animation, and this was the story he wanted to do. Pitched it to Disney, and they passed on it, thinking it would be too expensive. Yeah. And so it got shoved off to an independent company. Yeah. And they just did it as a 2D thing. But yeah, totally.
Yeah, because
appropriate.
There's just parts of the elements of, like, being abandoned, which you see a couple times in the Toy Story movies,
right?
That this hits, and Toy Story 2, it deals like they're being held captive by the toy collector, and then in Toy Story 1, there's Sid who, like, mutilates the toys, and the sort of pawn shop owner in this is sort of a mishmash of those two.
Right.
Oh, God, I'm a mishmash!
And even the swamp segment sort of reminded me of Toy Story 3
Oh.
when, like, they're going into, like, the fire pits.
Right, yeah. Because they all go together. They all just say... I mean, they were kind of forced because they were tied to Kirby, but... Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't think of that.
So I guess I should ask you, like, this was more of a nostalgia vehicle for you. Like, how does it hold up?
Well, I found it to be a lot better viewing it than I thought it would be. I was really worried coming into this, viewing it as just like a film and trying not to think of it from a nostalgia standpoint. And I'll be honest, I couldn't put all of my nostalgia aside. There were definitely some moments, especially the songs. I mean, when that first song happens, I like welled up and was singing along. Just
really?
I mean, I couldn't help myself. I just love it. I don't know. It like hits a certain part of my pleasure center in my brain, and I just am immediately brought back to enjoying that.
Okay.
But I think it holds up. I think it holds up pretty well. It deals with themes that are not always present in children's movies, and it does so in a way that doesn't talk down to children.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Like I never really at any point thought the movie was like too kiddie.
Yeah.
Like, I never felt like. I mean, I watched it and I'm like, okay, this is definitely like a children's movie. Like that's obvious, but there's so many other children's movies that just feel like, you know, there's an age maximum on this.
Yeah.
And I definitely did not feel that way with this one.
And also the other way around with a lot of like 70s and early 80s animation features where it's like too dark for kids. Like this is a movie for adults, you know what I mean? But like this one I feel like strikes that right tone of like dealing with serious issues but keeping it light enough that children can watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah, so in 2016 I watched all the like primary like theatrically released Disney feature-length films. This one, you know, this was like still under like the Disney umbrella, but was like an independent release.
Right. Yeah.
And the 80s were sort of a dark time for Disney. It's not that they were making bad movies necessarily, but they, you know, most of the movies from the 1980s aren't what they're known for.
Right.
And what struck me about this one is that really most of the like pre-Little Mermaid Disney movies are mostly just cute animals doing cute things, but they're not plot-driven affairs. You know, they're mostly there because, you know, animation was still new. And this reminded me, and Great Mouse Detective, which I think was from around the same year, as sort of a move away from just, like, cutesy animated creatures doing cutesy things. Like, this had a plot. Like, it moved forward.
And even a tiny bit of character development.
Yeah. And, yes, and so watching that kind of made me, I was like, this is sort of different from other animated features of the time because, this was more forward thinking in that respect. Like Disney, the people who wrote Great Mouse Detective went on to write, you know, Little Mermaid and I think like The Lion King and like a couple of, and like Princess and the Frog, which is one of their later good ones. But they definitely were more plot driven in their stories.
A lot of people who worked on The Brave Little Toaster worked on some of that Disney Renaissance stuff from the 90s.
Yeah, actually. I was reading about that.
One of them went on to direct The Lion King.
Okay.
Character designer or something like that. Went on to actually full on direct one of them. So,
but yeah, so it seemed very progressive in that manner. Like it knew that, you know, it couldn't just be a cute little toaster doing cute stuff. Like it had to move forward.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another one. When like the toaster has like the bad dream.
Right.
Of like it starts out as like a flashback, and then like the smoke like comes out and grabs the kid.
Yeah.
I definitely remember the scene where the toaster fell in the bathtub, and like that freaked me out as a kid.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be kind of intense, a little too far. Yeah. And that was something I read where it's like because they weren't an actual Disney release, they were able to push those boundaries a little more.
Yeah.
And kind of go places that Disney normally wouldn't let an animated feature go.
Yeah, like this, you know, it had that darkness to it, but like without like the Saturday morning cartoon feel to it. Like,
yeah.
It felt like a cinematic movie. It didn't feel like a episodic, fantasy journey necessarily.
Yeah. There's actually some things, it's funny, reading the Wikipedia page on this after watching it made me realize there's still some things that I've missed in it. One example, and I'd love to go, one of these days I'm sure I'll watch it again and look at it through this lens, but it's like the 5 main characters are all, they're chosen as the appliances that they are based on personality types.
Yeah.
So like the blanket is a security blanket for the master, but is needs the master for his own security.
Yeah.
Like the lamp is bright, literally bright, but not mentally bright.
Sure.
Or like Kirby, the vacuum holds everything in like a vacuum does, but then he's the one who has the mental breakdown.
Yeah.
So, and then the toaster is like reflective, so everybody sees themselves in her, and therefore...
It's a her?
Yeah.
No.
Voiced by a woman.
So is Bart Simpson.
I think they're pretty careful not to use a lot of pronouns. Gendered pronouns. And, the director definitely wanted the toaster to be a woman.
Oh.
Yeah, which is interesting. So
I did not project that. So
yeah. It seems very, like, gender neutral, the toaster. And I'm pretty sure that's the one that they're most careful with, like, not saying he, she.
Okay.
They really don't. The only time I could think of in the whole movie was when, one of my favorite lines, actually, is when the radio is when they're lost, and the radio's kind of telling them, oh, well, I know where we're going, and then Lampy comes in and says,
oh, yeah? Who's supposed to be the big shot navigator around here, Mr. Loudmouth? Mr. Big Loudmouth?
and he says Mr.
Oh.
That's my point. I also wanted to get that quote in there, because I use that a lot.
Okay. To be fair, though, was it really the toaster that was so brave in this?
I think they're all pretty brave.
Yeah, I'll say at the end the toaster pulls it out, but 90% of the movie, it seems like they're all on the same page.
Yeah, they're all kind of putting it out there.
Toasty does save the day.
Yeah.
Sacrifices herself.
They all have, I was noticing, except for Radio, have a moment of self-sacrifice. When you think about it, like Kirby jumps off the cliff to go save everybody.
Yeah.
Lampy charges the battery by getting electrocuted.
Yeah, that's true.
Just before that, Blanket makes himself into a tent for everybody.
Yeah.
Not that that's like crazy, but he is supposed to be kind of a child or something.
Yeah.
But everybody except for Radio really has kind of a moment of self-sacrifice for the group, which I think, speaks to another theme of this movie in that they're a team the whole way through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They become a team, more of a team as they go along, or a closer knit team. But they're all working together the whole time. They're like, it's all for one or nothing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They don't leave anybody behind. They're never, and it's never even comes into their mind that they would do that. It's always we have to go together.
One thing that, when I started watching it, there wasn't really an emotional weight to it. But by the time you get to the end and you realize how old the master is, which, by the way, I hate that term.
And I think it's weird too.
It makes me just think of some DS relationship. And it bothers me, but especially the way that Blanky says it.
It's the master.
Yeah, that opening sequence is real creepy. His eyes get all wide, and he's just bobbing his head and floating down the staircase. It's creepy.
They clean that house every day.
Yeah.
But it is filthy.
Yeah, I thought about that too.
I'm if they clean this house every day, why is there so much dust fucking everywhere? But also, what really sunk in watching it was that I didn't realize how long that they had been there.
Yeah.
It must have been 10 years or something like that.
Yeah, he's a child when...
Yeah, the master, the way that they always envision him, he's, just a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they finally meet up with him, he's,
going
packing up for college.
Yeah.
That's another thing that in the Toy Story movies, in the first Toy Story, Andy's a kid. In the third one, he's giving up his toys because he's moving out and going to college.
Right.
And even, the design of the master and Andy from Toy Story, they look pretty similar. They're both
Redheads, yeah. And not a sexual object or a villain.
In fact, the Master did all right for himself. He got a hot Nubian princess as a girlfriend.
Yeah, I love Chris, by the way. She's awesome.
Badass, yeah.
Hey, these are hard to find!
Oh, yeah, she's pulling off, like, not hubcaps, but,
front grills.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris is awesome.
I did think, I was like, she is far too cool for me.
Well, once he gets to college, they'll probably split apart and go their separate ways. But
it's like, she was hot, and she was cool, and I was like...
She had a convertible.
Yeah. I'm like, man, get that pregnant.
You gotta lock that down.
Lock that down, yeah.
There's a lot of quotes from this movie that I really love, and I found out later, after reading about this, that a lot of it was improvised.
Really?
Yeah, so he got most of the voice cast from... He went to the Groundlings in Los Angeles and just, like, had a bunch of them
That
audition.
would explain the Phil Hartman and the John Lovitz.
Exactly. And actually the whole... Or also Lampy, I think, and the Toaster were Groundlings.
Okay.
So, and then there's others sprinkled throughout. Yeah, he would have them read the written line, and then he'd be like, okay, just improvise for a while.
Okay.
On that, same thing. And apparently, most of the time he would use the improvised lines, but John Lovitz specifically got cast on SNL after this. He basically did this movie, and then he was cast in SNL. It's like, I can't do a whole bunch of stuff. So that's actually not him singing when it's radio singing.
Oh, okay.
And also, he most of his dialogue was all done in one marathon session.
Oh, okay.
And he did it all by himself. So that's why there's a lot of times where it's just radio kind of going off.
Okay.
And then they kind of react to it. And I was thinking, watching it this time, I was thinking, like, wow, John Lovitz really did a lot of fun punch-ups in this. But it's like, no, he was basically just covering all his bases.
Yeah.
Also, and then Kirby is voiced by... Oh, I didn't write his name down. But he is the same dude who sings the You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch song.
Okay.
As well as voiced Tony the Tiger for 40-some years.
Oh, yeah. I think he just passed away, actually.
Yeah, 91.
Okay.
He's also, I don't know how much Disney stuff you know, but he's the one who does the voice for the haunted house at Disneyland.
Oh, okay.
He's famous. Look it up. You'll figure it out.
Okay.
But I love... another thing I noticed this time around is that this movie kind of has... it's a big grab bag of movie devices, which is kind of cool. Because you get the montage.
Sure.
You get a dream sequence.
Yeah.
You get a flashback.
Yeah.
You get musical numbers.
Sure.
You have like a Busby Berkeley situation with frogs and like...
Yeah.
It's really got... It's filmy, It's trying to... Filmy. Wait, that's not right.
Just like my mouth every morning.
They really kind of go all out on making this something special.
Sure. Yeah, and it's strange for an independent feature. They got Alfred Newman, who's done film scores, a lot. But Van Dyke Parks wrote the songs.
Right, yeah.
He produced the Beach Boys and more recently Joanna Newsom. And,
yeah, that's a big name.
Yeah, it is a sizable talent to have on your little independent feature.
Yeah. I don't know how they got him, but
yeah.
I'm glad they did.
So, now, for me, personally, I feel that some of the songs are a little weak.
Okay, I think the first one is great.
It's okay. Continue.
It's like setting up the whole thing. It's like the I Wish song of this movie.
It's pretty good. The middle, whatever there's a big gap. Like, there's one song in the beginning, and I feel like we go 20 minutes without a song, and then we have 5 songs.
They mush them all at the end. You're right.
But I like as it goes on. There's I think it's the song when they finally get to the condo or the apartment, and there's all the modern devices. What the fuck was that entertainment center? It was the reel-to-reel, but the sound bars and was as tall as I am.
Yeah, I've never seen... Maybe that was something that only happened in the 80s, because I've never seen one of those in my life.
I have no idea what it is. But that song was Herbie Hancock Rocket, but with Blondie singing over it. Well, I can dig the song. It's still not super great, but
I was reading it this time as sort of a critique on consumerism a little bit.
well, definitely.
And I've never noticed that before somehow.
But yeah, just the song itself, it was like one of those like uber modern, like, you know, electronic at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, of course, this just sounds like, you know, a Gary Newman song. So, question for you: which of these objects in real life did you hold this much value for? Like, if you like were moving and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go grab this, you know, XYZ from my parents' place and bring it with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you really put this much like sentimental value on a vacuum?
Yeah, he loved vacuum.
Like, he goes back to the cottage to like find a radio, a toaster, a blanket, a vacuum, and a lamp, and he's like distraught that they're not there anymore. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, these are like the cheapest appliances that you can reasonably find.
The blanket one is kind of gross, even when you think about it.
Don't they like mention that it's all stained and stuff like that
Yeah,
at some point?
and he picks it up off the conveyor belt and saying like, "Oh, this looks like my old blanket." He rubs it on his face.
Sure. Yep, he sure does.
Gross, master. What are you doing? One thing I noticed this time is that this movie's kind of not afraid to take moments and pauses a little bit.
Okay.
And specifically, I'm thinking of when they're doing the Tutti Frutti thing, and the blanket stopped because he hears a car.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's a kind of a long, slow pause, and they all just kind of stop and look at him, and then there's a moment of silence, and all you hear is him whisper quietly, "Oh, God." And then they all freak out. Mm-hmm. And then again, that happens when everybody falls off the waterfall, and Kirby just like backs up slowly.
Oh, yeah.
And it takes... You see nothing but the waterfall for... It's a good, 10 seconds of nothing. And then he comes and triumphantly jumps off. But what if that's where the movie ended and the rest of it... Or after that we just follow Kirby as he goes back home. I'm ashamed. Just kidding. But, I mean, in that moment, you don't know what's going to happen if this is your first time viewing it, you know?
Do you think the moral of the story is just to stay put? If they had just stayed there, then the master would have come and get them?
Well, obviously... But I would counter that with the first lyrics from the first song, sung by Toaster, which are, "Life is but a journey on a road that's within. Your head says you should stay, but your heart says to begin. So you go, but you don't want to go."
Was this a movie that you watched, ad nauseum as a kid? Did you just play, rewind?
It was one... we had cable growing up, and so it was on the Disney Channel a lot, and whenever it was on, I would watch it.
Okay.
And then, at some point, my parents bought me a VHS copy of it for Christmas, and I wore that thing out. I still have it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was going to use it to watch this time, but I got rid of all my cables that would connect it.
Your AV
I still have my
cables?
VHS. Yeah, I still have my VHS player. I just don't have...
Can you bring that over here? I need a VHS player.
Yeah, it's just sitting in a closet right now.
Okay.
There's a Blue's Clues sticker on it, though.
Yeah, I had a VCR, but I had to get rid of it a couple years ago because I lost the remote for it, and there was no tracking button on the device itself. So the tracking got off, and there was nothing I could do to fix it.
So everything's just like watching scrambled cable. Yeah, no good. Real fast, I just want to throw this on here because I think it's cool. Brave Little Toaster is the first movie to be shown at Sundance. First animated movie.
Okay.
First animated movie to be shown at Sundance.
That is cool.
And it held that title until Waking Life.
Really?
Yeah, so it was... So that's 12, 13 years.
Yeah, I was going to say Waking Life is, I feel, around 2000 at least.
Yeah. And they were planning... And there's this is kind of hearsay, but Jerry Reese, the director, said that somebody who was on the jury who decides, like, I don't know what the best film at Sundance award is called, but they planned to award it to The Brave Little Toaster, but everyone kind of unanimously decided if we award this to an animated feature, no one will ever take us seriously again.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of hearsay, I guess. But makes sense. In the 80s, like...
Yeah, I mean...
It was still kind of new then, too, right? Sundance was still kind of coming into
yeah,
its own then.
Yeah, definitely. And then if you're working in a medium that is, aimed exclusively at children, it's sort of hard to consider it art then.
Sure.
Even if it genuinely is.
Sure. And I guess that's why I like this movie, is that it's got... it takes itself kind of seriously.
Yeah.
For a children's film, you know? It's got elements that kind of keep it in the children's zone, but it treats them, it doesn't talk down, and it treats them with maturity, and I don't know, there's some heavy themes in there.
Yeah, every now and again, when I talk to, like, a cousin or something of mine, sometimes I forget that, like, oh, yeah, like, even though they're, like, 14 or 15 or something like that, like, they know stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, when I came out of the closet, like, it wasn't, like, to everyone all at once. It was, like, one family member at a time, and it was like, oh, how is so-and-so going to react? How is so-and-so going to react? No one ever asked how, like, the grandkids were going to react. Everyone knew that they would not give a fuck.
They don't care. Yeah.
They do not care. Like, they know what's up. They would just say, like, this is Matt's boyfriend. Older people would be like, this is Matt's special friend. And we'd all be like, really? Like,
Fine.
really? But yeah, for, like, the grandkids, it was like, no, they know the score.
Yeah, they get it. Don't talk down to children.
Yeah.
They need to know about drugs, pornography, all adult issues,
And
starting at an early age. I don't know how
you
to
heard it here,
children.
folks. Ryan Whedon, advocating exposing children to pornography, drugs.
Oh, no. I shouldn't be allowed a public platform. Yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to cover. Honestly, most of the things I wrote here are just like quotes from the movie that I really like.
List them up, bucko.
You can't fool us. We love you. That's right, like Miss Roosevelt loved her husband.
I definitely remember the radio part of that quote. Have you ever read those letters between Eleanor Roosevelt and Amelia Earhart? They are saucy.
Elaborate, please.
Well, how do you think Eleanor Roosevelt and the first female pilot would write to one another? It's like a Henry Miller novel.
Dear Amelia, the White House is so boring these days. I keep thinking of the letter you sent me telling me of your flights over Nebraska. When will you take me on one of them? Franklin is calling. I must end this letter shortly.
I like how your version of Eleanor Roosevelt writing a saucy letter is like a Jane Austen novel.
I don't know.
Your flights over Nebraska.
Maybe I should have made her more Katharine Hepburn style.
Have you ever even read a Henry Miller novel?
I read Tropic of Cancer.
They're erotic.
Yeah, that's not giving Eleanor Roosevelt a lot of credit, is it? Well, I'm curious what you want to watch next week. How are you going to follow this up?
Well, you zigged, so I got a zag. Are you familiar with the film Sorcerer?
No.
William Friedkin movie.
Okay.
came out the same day as Star Wars.
Oh.
And bombed terribly. And it's
guy.
been, sort of overshadowed since. Like, it, didn't really make the traction that it oughtn't to.
Wait, that places it firmly in the, when he was on a high streak, isn't it?
Yeah, he was still in top form. Have you ever seen the movie Wages of Fear?
No.
It's a French film, and it's pretty good. I like it. And the director of that, Clouseau, personally, gave Friedkin his blessing in remaking it, said that, you are the only director with the chops to do a remake justice.
Wow.
I think I like Sorcerer just a pinch more. So...
I'm excited. This is the first time we're doing a repeat director.
Have we done another Friedkin?
No.
Oh.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I was thinking, because we did Exorcist 3. We talked a lot about it. But we haven't actually watched a Friedkin film yet.
And I also talked about the movie Guardian.
That's right.
But, yeah.
Jeez. Don't give me a platform.
So, yeah, Sorcerer.
Cool. All right, I'm excited.
You should be.
Let's plug our junk.
All right. Follow us on Twitter at X-Rated Movies.
Mm-hmm.
Follow us, or like our page, and follow us on Facebook at Rated X Movies.
Mm-hmm.
Email us, x.rated.movies@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. And if you like what you hear, rate, review, subscribe.
On iTunes. Especially rate and review. We would love it if you all did that, so...
And just tell us what you think.
There might be some tape in it for you.
Yeah. We're sending out tape now. I don't care. We're doing it. We're doing it. Thanks again. We'll see you next week for William Friedkin's Sorcerer. Thanks again. And just remember, life is but a journey on a road that's within.